doing this for a long time now. Help us start to rebuild it.
All right, welcome back to the Broken Instruments podcast. I have a new guest, and I want to welcome another brother of mine. And I feel like I host a lot of my brothers. People probably think I have so many brothers, but this guy definitely was one that I grew up with. We went to school together probably since middle school, I think. Yeah. That was probably when we started getting close and starting going through the challenges of life together. This is Mr. Neiman Honorio Leyran. Welcome, man.
Thanks for having me.
Not a lot of people have honor in their name. So I just want to point that out, that's something. I think it's, I don't believe in coincidences, but I think it's destiny, fate, whatever we call it. You're one that I definitely needed to have on the podcast names because we have a lot of ideas together, and I'm more the idea guy. And I know you as the guy, and I call these people alchemists in my life, that if there's an idea or a specific project that I have, there's people I can call on that can kind of organize my thoughts and turn the crap into gold. And I think that's something this past year we've been kind of bouncing ideas around, and you've helped me a lot as far as where I'm going with the podcast, what I'm doing aside from like my work as a nurse or an instructor. So I'm glad to have you on. There's a lot that we could probably get into, but again, we don't really have an agenda.
Yeah. Yes.
To start off, man, you live out here in Irvine, and the building you live in is amazing. I'm shocked. We live out here. You live out here by the Angel Stadium. So yeah. Congratulations.
Thanks for that. It's actually funny because when I worked at Disneyland, I would always drive by this area, and me and one of my friends, we always like, let's live out here one of these days, nice. It's right by Angel Stadium. This would be so crazy to live out here. And fast forward to maybe 6-7 years later, and I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, let's make this dream come true. Like you said, like there's ideas that are planted, and just want to make sure we run with it.
If there's anyone that I can say is an enthusiast for dreams, you're like a dream enthusiast.
Dude, yeah.
I don't know how else to describe you. I think we've dove into so many different conversations in the past, and I think there was one conversation that we had about finding your calling in life. And I remember asking you, like, what's your calling? If I remember right, you told me that your calling in life is to help people accomplish their dreams.
Yeah. That
is super deep. And I don't want to say that, if someone meets you, they won't see that. I want to say that the first time they meet you, they'll probably see a smile, for one.
Yeah.
And a super high energy, positive person. Now, to have that specific calling of helping people accomplish their dreams, and this is the first time I'm asking everybody, how did you get there? Because, people have so many different callings in life, but that one is very specific, and I never heard it before.
Yeah. No. When you really think about, we've been through so much together, so it's actually really funny to go back to the very beginning and all the conversations we had as a kid. I think we talked about this a little while ago, right? We were talking about we would always have sleepovers at your place, and it would be late at night, and we were 10, 11, something like that, talking about purpose of life, And now that I really think about how deep that is, but I think we always understood what service meant, and whenever I heard service, it really sounded like service to others. And then as I was growing up and going through my life, I realized, shoot, I really love seeing people perform live, because it's like they're pursuing their passion, something they want to do for the rest of their life. And then as I was meeting more and more friends, I was like, oh crap, they have so much they want to offer. And some people, there's no, I'm going to put that off to the side. I hate seeing that, so I wanted to help. If someone said I want to do something, I want to be a part of that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about you and I, obviously we know so much about each other. You always want to be people centered. You're always about the people around you. And I mean, for me, that's super inspiring. You ended up at places like Regal Entertainment, Disney, like you mentioned. You end up getting those places where it's service focused for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, the Disney service model that you always talked about with us is critical, obviously, but I think it stemmed way before that. I feel like you said when we grew up and we were having sleepovers or whatever, getting into trouble. No, we were good boys. We grew up in church together for sure, and there was a lot that we did as far as serving retreat classes. Service to others was always a big theme in our lives. It shaped, I think, everything we do now, and everything we do is stemming from that at some point. If you remember way back then, I think in our we called them chapters, right, of youth ministry. They had a nickname for you. It was the heart of the chapter. And I don't know how you feel about that now, but it was always that.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm curious to know, I mean, because we threw that around before.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel back then?
No, the funny thing is, like, to this day, I still kind of feel like it's more of a, like, because I always tried the hardest, but got the furthest, like if you're picturing us doing sprints, down the, like, back and forth, you would, like, see me and, like, dude, that guy is working his butt off. And then I'm, like, on the very back of the pack, like, it's like, dude, that guy for sure is the first place if you're just looking at my face.
Yeah.
It was, like, I was always in the back, but, yeah, I to this day, like, I'm always battling imposter syndrome, to be honest. Like,
Well,
like, for people saying, like, oh, wow, the guy has, like, a big heart, or this guy cares about everyone. Like, sometimes I always wonder, like, dude, like, I know I care about people. I know that's part of that is true in me, but, like, that's a lot of pressure that I always felt like, I have to be the caring one, or I have to, like, always put others ahead of me. And yeah, sometimes it was difficult.
I don't think that that's the problem. I think with imposter syndrome is that when people make you out to be something that you don't necessarily believe in at the time, you get the pressure to keep performing that way.
Yeah.
But remember, they named you that, or they called you that. They labeled you that because that's how you were.
Yeah.
It's a weird mind fuck because you end up doing, you do things for the, the bigger purpose. And then all of a sudden, like you said, it flips over and it's almost like now you have to do it to fulfill whatever they expect of you and they believe you to be. And I think all heroes do that. All people that hold positions, they end up fighting themselves to stay who they are. And I mean, for me, I still think it's there. I don't think that you're an imposter, and maybe I got it wrong. Maybe you're the ultimate Loki or something, and you're fooling me. But I think sincerely, if you get out of your head, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that's anybody. I think anybody would have to go through that or be challenged by that. You know?
Yeah.
Speaking of that, and like the way I look at it, you are super enthusiastic about, I mean, everything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
I'll remember one time we were at Disneyland, and it was with like the youth group from our church. And this came up because I was watching the Behind the Attraction, or Beyond the Attraction.
Behind
the Attraction on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
The first one obviously is Jungle Cruise. Yeah. And you're Skipper Neems, right? You're Skipper Neeman.
Yeah.
And I remember there was that one time where it was all of, like the members of our youth group in church, and I would argue that it was a historical moment in Disney history.
Yeah.
They might not show it on the show, but when you picked up that mic to do like, the what is it? Like there's a script of jokes, right?
Yeah, the spiel.
And I think we've been on your boat before.
Yeah.
Before that, like just as a guest, right? Mm-hmm. Pretend like we didn't know you. And you performed amazingly. And me as your older brother, and I'm always hard on you, right? Yeah. You know that. But when you performed, that was one of those moments where I realized, like, oh shoot, man, this guy is coming into his own. Yeah. And not to say that I always wanted to like be the older brother to you or anything. It was more of I need to allow this guy to fly. Yeah. I can't label him as my younger brother and like I'm always going to be ahead of him in anything. And that was not intentional. It was more of like, that's how we grew up, right?
Yeah.
You performed, and like for us as guests, right? And then I remember when that one boat it was like filled with our youth members.
Yeah.
You try to perform and everyone was like joking with you.
Yeah.
And then finally you snapped and you were like, you know what? Like, F it at this point, right?
Yeah.
And that moment, for some reason, for me, it was not that you broke character. It was more like you enjoyed the moment. You were a guy that always enjoyed the moments. And I try to do that. I try to do that everywhere I go. I try to enjoy the moments rather than, get in my head too much.
Yeah.
Because again, I feel the same way where I feel like I have to always perform. And at the end of the day, we don't have to do that with each other. We don't have to do that with, our friends, our family.
Yeah.
But definitely, Disneyland was a place that I feel grew so much.
Yeah.
Getting there. I mean, not a lot of people. I mean, a few people that we do know work at Disneyland. A lot of people work at Disneyland, but not a lot of people were in your position at Disneyland as a lead, right?
Yeah.
In the was it guest operations?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So, I mean, I would say, what's the biggest takeaway? And that might be a very vague freaking question. But working at Disney, it felt like home to you. So, what was the biggest takeaway there? What'd you get from that?
What's tripping me out right now is like how perceptive you were from like a little boat ride, like just being on my boat for 7 minutes, and to really like pinpoint what that experience meant in my life.
Wow.
Because
was it 7 minutes? That was it?
Yeah, Jungle Cruises are supposed to be 7 minutes.
Oh, shoot.
That's like back then they were saying that was the cap of attention span. Yeah, if that was still the truth, it'd be like a 20-second ride. But
oh, damn.
But what trips me out about that is like that was exactly what my experience was in Disney. Like we grew up together, right? Like I was always the youngest cousin.
Yeah.
I was always the youngest one in our group all together. I was always the shy, quiet one.
Yep.
Like my best friend Mark, right? Like he was my friend because he felt bad for me. Like I wouldn't say 2 words. But Disney was an opportunity to like be who I wanted to be without people knowing my past, without people knowing who my dad was. I think that was the biggest part. Like I finally had room to kind of say like, hey, I want to be a good person. Like, let me see what I could do at the happiest place on earth.
Nice.
Yeah. And when I was surrounded with people who like encouraged me, and when I found success through, like being a good person and like really like making dreams come true, creating happiness, that's when I felt like I felt that purpose, and yeah, I would never trade those years for anything.
Yeah. And I feel like the companies that you go to now, you bring that and they feel it. I think that it's infectious at that point where it's the customer, it's the client in mind always. Yeah. And I mean, in business, obviously it's a client and customer, but with you, when you're working with people around you, everybody is impacted by your service to them. And when we talk about family, we talk about friends. I mean, translating to any project that we're working on, you're one of the most personable people that I know. And you have a lot of skill in getting people comfortable. And I don't know if that's nurtured. I don't know if that's nature. Where do you grab that from?
No, dang, I really didn't think about that. It obviously, this conversation is always going to revolve back to our faith, right? And what it comes into. Mm-hmm. And like growing up, whenever we talked about how we were going to show the world or who we were going to be, it was always about like you wanted to be a light in people's lives. Like you wanted to lift people up instead of being a burden to them. So that's the mindset I come into with every interaction I come into. Like, am I actually representing, the God that I love, that I am a good person, that, I am here to make things better for you, instead of being a burden. So yeah, that's how I take most of my interactions, and like that levity, that like just peace, I think is the word I'm looking for, is what I'm always looking for.
How then do you deal with those that you feel like aren't like understanding how much you put forth, or the customer that would still like, curse at you because you didn't, whatever, and they treat you like dirt after everything that you do? How do you deal with that then?
I think what it comes down to, though, when I really look at those, and it comes with anyone who's experiencing extreme anguish, like, I just pity them. You know, like, if this is the moment I'm feeling with them right now, like, this is how they interact with everything in their life. That negativity, that anger, that frustration, you know, like, all of that is constantly in their life. And I always feel so bad for that. Like,
Yeah.
wow, you're at Disneyland and, you know, like, you can't even enjoy this. Like,
Yeah, no, you know, it's you see it all the time at Disneyland. It's the happiest place on earth, but definitely, you bring a family there,
Yeah.
and the family always brings their whatever it is, drama or whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, we took Mela last month, and we were going towards Toontown, and all I could think of was that one family that a fight broke out this past year.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I don't know how we can get to that point as a family, but it does stem from, you know, whatever values or family, you know, core principles the family has. I can't imagine what you've seen or what people that work at Disney, whatever they see every day, because you can't really untrain a family. You're at Disneyland, but the family is going to be a family.
Yeah.
And that's all the baggage with it.
Yeah.
Right. Have you dealt with anything crazy like that at Disneyland? Not a fight, but I mean, something where you had to kind of.
No, like we did see a lot, you know, like I have seen fights. I remember there was this one fireworks show, right? And like one of my cast members came up to me and he like all of his clothes were ripped and like it was like disheveled and he said like these two groups of like 15-year-old girls just started like all out brawl in front of the castle.
What?
And he was like
During the fireworks.
Yeah, he wasn't supposed to get in the middle, but he was just like, I'm like, how is that possible?
What could you possibly argue about during fireworks then?
I know.
You know?
I know, but,
I would assume it's like super important though.
yeah, I guess. But there was a lot of people who are just missing that mark, right? Like, just like, hey, where are you right now? Like, and I don't know. I don't know what it is of like, if it's our job to like make them see like, hey, this isn't as important, you know, like whatever you're arguing about, like you could hold off for a second, but I don't know.
You know, and I think that's a problem with everybody nowadays where, you know, every problem is now. Every problem is relevant no matter what. Yeah. Even if, you know, at home their family is, you know, going through hardship, like, nah, this is a problem. You got my order wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in like you said, in the scheme of things, does it really matter right now?
Yeah.
You know, we're in a room with a roof and walls and we're comfortable. There are people without any of this and they're content with their life. But I mean, I think the world problems are our problems.
Yeah.
And in turn, we feel like we could fix everything.
Yeah.
Whether it be something healthy or something unhealthy. And I don't know, this speaks to kind of like our society and things nowadays where I think everything's hyper-stimulating and everything's quick, instant gratification, whatever they call it. And that's a dangerous path. You know, now, like in the companies you work for, you're one in you work for Living Spaces, right? And you're part of the learning and development or training and development.
Yeah.
I would assume when you get a new hire and they come in and they, you know, they're learning the company, they come across you.
Yeah.
I think I've asked you this in the past. How do you generate buy-in? And kind of, it's almost like having this person become one of the family in a company.
Yeah.
How do you generate buy-in from those people?
I mean, it's just what we grew up with, right? Like just becoming that welcoming face, being, you know, like I think what we're like alluding to all of this, you know, is are we understanding people's needs and wants? You know, like I think what we do really well, if you're really people centric, you understand people's needs. You know, you understand like this person needs a job. This person needs, you know, to feel like he or she could be successful in this role. How can I provide that for them? You know, when things start getting a little rocky and a little shaky is like when people want things and you just tell them no and like, but they don't see that perspective, you know? So I guess it's always like creating the right perspective to fulfill their needs as opposed to the wants.
And some people don't really know their needs over their wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang. And I think that stems from who we are as people, where we're focused on too many of wanting, and I think that's a selfish thing. I mean, for, you know, a young guy to be the one to be the welcoming face, but also to teach them the core values of a company. That's a lot of pressure, I would assume.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, obviously you do a part-time job, and I would say what we're talking about, this is like directly what education is, being an educator, where students come in and they think they know what they want, right? And they really want you to just package it for them.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked and caught up about teaching, because you started this past year in January, I think, right?
Yeah.
What's that been like, man? Because I've had some goods and some bads, good experiences, bad experiences, and everything else. I mean, how's it been so far being an educator?
To simply put, ever since I was young, I knew at one point I wanted to teach at the college level. Like, it was just in my head. I pictured myself as an old man, being, like
Even before college?
Even before college, like, I just wanted to be like this old man. Like, hey, listen, this is how it's done, And when this opportunity came, like maybe 20 years earlier than I expected, like, I'm not gonna pass that up. Yeah. But I was really worried. I was scared. Like, okay, they're gonna look at me. I look hella young. I'm really dorky. I don't know if they're gonna like that or not. But the second I press play, or not play, but hit record for the Zoom session, and like all this energy, like it must have been like all that pepped up Disney energy, like shot out like in the first 10 seconds. And I set up the mood of like, this is what the next semester is going to be, like just full. I have the recording of it. I don't want to show anyone.
I was going to say, I wanted to see it.
It's so embarrassing. It's like straight up like Disney. But I got all the students' reactions after every class. And, like I really spent a lot of time making sure that they felt comfortable in my course and they felt like they were learning something. And by the end of it, I was like, this is what I want. This is what I meant to be. Like, this is amazing. This is an amazing experience to like be a part of people's lives. Like you said, my whole mission is to be a part of people's journeys to achieve what they really want in life, or really need in their life. Really need. Yeah. And here they are in their last semester of college. And, like they spent 4 years saying like, I can't wait to get out of college. And now they're about to be out of college and they're all freaking out. And I get to be there to be like, hey, relax. Look at what you've learned. Look at how you've grown, and look how you're going to continue to grow. And yeah, that's something I would never trade.
So you get them at the end of their program.
Yeah.
They're about to graduate.
Yeah. Like I'm one of their last classes, if not last.
Nice. And it's perfect at that moment to tie everything in, why they even began in the first place.
Yeah.
Any weird, unexpected challenges?
Like I didn't expect to get like so many personal emails of like all the problems that are happening in your life. Or like, whoa, you just need to tell me you weren't going to be there on Tuesday. You didn't need. Oh man, yeah.
No, true. Yeah, true. And that speaks a lot, because they confide in you.
Yeah. And
they trust you. I mean, whether it's BS or not, I mean, they're trying to win us over too. They're trying to win like our sympathy.
Yeah.
But I mean, out of the goodness of your heart, I'm sure you're just like, all right, yeah, I get it. But really, it's interesting to think about. But you're one of the people that they look up to, and then they can turn to without that kind of personal bias towards them. And I think that's why they feel comfortable letting someone like their instructor or their educator. And I mean, and it's funny because I wanted to have this conversation because not a lot of people know what their instructors are thinking.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people don't know how much it takes to prepare for that, like for each lecture or for whatever. So how many semesters did you do so far?
So I just had that one semester, and I have my next one coming up.
And it's online, right? This past one?
This past one was online. This next one's going to be in person.
Yeah. Okay, good. How big is a class?
So last semester was 40 students.
Okay. So do you think it's going to be around there, like 40 in person and like live?
As of right now, like there's about 30 signed up.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yeah. Now, as far as content, are these students, these are graduate students, right? Getting their master's?
Undergrad.
Oh, undergrad.
Getting their bachelor's.
So,
some graduate students.
Yeah, and the bachelor's can be in so many different things, right?
Yeah, mostly business, HR, concentration, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
So since you're teaching them at the end of the program, leadership and management, I can imagine there's some core values in that you highlight. Because, I mean, we could learn about leadership styles all we want. But how do you pull the leader out of your students? How do you help them find the leader that they are?
Yeah, I think what's great about college and like really having time to go over these concepts is you get to have them have the discussion. So my class is learning and development. So I'm teaching them just like little part of HR that most people ignore. And my job is like, I want at least one person to fall in love with the industry, to want to grow into it. But a key aspect of it is understanding that learning and development is sometimes just dropping a question in and seeing how people could grow from one another, especially when it comes to a loose topic like leadership. You ask a question like, what makes a good leader? And then you just like really let the conversation build in them. So that's what I pride myself in my classes, of like getting the questions and getting the answers from them in their mind. And one, it does a few things. One, we get to talk about the concepts that we're hoping they would learn. But two, they get to hear their own voice and get the confidence of, yeah, I do believe this, or I don't believe that. And I think that's a big part of leadership, right? Is just finding your confident self where you could hold true to what you believe, and you've had an opportunity to discuss those things. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's how you get them to recognize and find it. Now, you're not posting this question out there right now. I'm asking you, what makes a good leader?
Great question. Let's have a discussion about it. The first thing I look for in a leader, and when I think a leader does, is people centric. It is. I don't think a leader has to have that vision of where they want to go, but they also need to have the engine, which are the people, like to lead them towards. So really understanding who your people are and getting them to believe where they want to go. I think that's the basics of a leader. Like leaders with poor intentions or bad intentions could do just as well as a leader, with good intentions, because it's just that vision and getting that buy-in.
It's definitely a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And I mean, a tool for one is a weapon of the other. And it really is, it comes down to intention. And it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've heard of leaders in the past that have just gotten a group of people to go a specific direction that ended up hurting people.
Yeah.
And to me, arguably, like we could label them leaders, because we don't really have other language than that. But I would say a true leader then would know the damage that one can do with these skills, with these tools, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, accomplish the goal. And I think any goal that we have that's worth it wouldn't hinder other people's lives. It wouldn't hurt people, right? And that's not to say like, people haven't gotten hurt in the past, obviously. But for the greater good, I think it's getting your people to understand, even if it hurts or it's a sacrifice on my part, more people benefit from it, right? So definitely, I mean, I agree, dude. Like, it's just a double-edged sword we all got to be worried about.
Yeah.
It's different to be a leader and a manager. I think we've had this conversation in the past too, where leaders versus managers, and there is a difference. There's a distinct difference that I'm trying to even understand right now.
Yeah.
You being a manager and being a lead in things, what was the management role versus like the leadership role, and where's that line like for you between the two?
Yeah. When I think about managers, the first thing I think about are key performance indicators, KPIs. That's all they're looking for. Like, hey, did this metric go up or down? How can I get that to go up or down? And there isn't much insight into, the people side of it, like how are the people role contributing to that? I think a leader is someone who is able to identify like what true success looks like beyond what those KPIs are supposed to be measuring. If I were to really define it, it is that vision. It is that vision that is holistic, that people can see, like, wow, this person has perfect perspective on all of it. Managers are more like narrow-minded. I don't care what the big picture is. Let's just make sure the objectives are being hit.
Yeah. Can one person be both?
Absolutely. it is someone who understands why those KPIs or why those objectives contribute towards an overall goal and are able to communicate that clearly with their team or their people.
Like I said, it's very dangerous, but I mean, I can imagine that that's a lot of pressure on one person to be a leader and a manager at the same time. Now, yeah, there have been, I think, people that do that. But like let's say like a Kobe. I know I freaking talk about Kobe all the time on this damn podcast, but you know, he's one of the people I looked up to with everything, with how he went about his career and stuff. There obviously like there's things that we have, you know, strengths in, and there's things that we have weaknesses in, or areas that we can improve on. Yeah. And when it comes down to it, I mean, I would say a good leader steps to the side and asks people for help. Like they know when to ask for help. And I would say Kobe at different times, he was a good leader for the moments that were the harshest moments in his career, like when he was straight up asshole or whatever. He was focused on numbers though, right? So it's kind of like it's both. And a guy like that with that kind of twisted mentality where he was able to have both, you can kind of see how it resulted in his life, right? You know, obviously at the end of his life, he was flourishing with his family. But he always had this cutthroat mentality, this double side to him that was always, you know, the black mamba in everything he went. But when you have that dark side, you know, things do suffer, like family and things like that. So it's hard for me to find that middle point. I guess there is no like perfect leader and manager. I would say that there's a mix of both, and it's any combination of like this one's a little bit more of a manager and secondary a leader than the other way around. I mean, all leaders are flawed, regardless of what they do and where they're at in life and what they provide for people. With you and instructing, or at least teaching students how to be the best leader that they could be, how do you get them to embrace the hardships then? Because we can always talk about all the positive stuff, like, oh yeah, like, you know, doing the best for others, and it's always service to them. How do you generate that enthusiasm and getting them to understand that it's not always going to be fun to be a leader? I mean, I don't know how, like, do you have any strategies on how to get them to embrace the hardship of it? What do you?
Yeah, I think, I know I keep saying this word, but I think it's just harking on it truly is clarity of vision. You know, it comes into it. If you understand where you need to be, you understand where you want to take things, you're going to also have to understand that there's going to be cold nights that you're going to have to get through to get to that point. You know, and, you know, if you doubt your mission, if you doubt your vision, if you doubt yourself, that is not going to take you there, right? Yeah.
Because when you're in that role and you have people that can't embrace it, like this past year, there's a lot of people that we know had a really hard time, not like because of specifically their lives, but just being locked down in their home and stuff like that. I mean, I found it hard to encourage people when even I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
The one big challenge that I kept asking myself too is, you know, and I faced it every day when I was with my students, even if it was Zoom. Like you can see it in their faces, like throughout every time that we met, that they're just getting drained. You know, that like, you know, they're home with like 5 kids and like they have, I mean, the last thing they want to worry about is this freaking Filipino guy on the screen, right?
Yeah.
And I found it a struggle to keep morale high, you know, and no matter how hard I harked on, like, you know, this is what we do. This is, you know, this is it. This is the sacrifice. People want comfort.
Yeah.
You know, and when they don't have comfort, they, you know, and they're in discomfort, they don't want to hear it, man. And I think that's one of the most difficult things that I had to encounter as an instructor during this year.
Yeah.
I mean, with that, obviously the pandemic was not something that no one planned on. No one knew that it was going to happen like this. In the big picture, what do you see the world being after this? Like emotionally and mentally as a people, not like, you know, like logistics in the world and stuff. I'm talking like emotion and stuff. What's the biggest challenge that the people are going to have to overcome?
That is such a great point, because over the past year, you know, I think you mentioned it in your previous podcast, you know, like what happens when you're under emotional threat, like in survival, right? Like that amygdala is like firing and it's kind of taking over your whole brain. And that's all you're constantly thinking about. Will I survive?
Yeah.
And I don't think a society has we've never in our lifetime like worried about going out of the door and think about like, am I gonna kill older people?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
You know, I visited somebody.
Seriously.
You know, like that was so emotionally draining, and like it took away from the other parts of our brain. You know, like there's this like science part that we usually teach in our customer service classes where we're talking about, you know, like when people are threatened and they're angry and they're emotional, it's called like amygdala hijack, right? Like it stops your prefrontal cortex from like being able to take logical arguments in, right?
You can't process ideas at that point.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back into what we were talking about vision. Like the prefrontal cortex is like the unique part of us that makes us different from animals, right? Or we're able to imagine something that isn't in front of them. You know, like no other animal could do that. It's only us. And if we spent our whole year freaking worried about that and not imagining where we could be, you know, like just worried about our life, I think that's going to have like big impacts in this future. Like it could either be one, like we're going to come out of it and feel like we're invincible because we survived whatever we survived. Or two is just going to make us overly cautious and be like, just, you know, like having to work through like, hey, can I survive today? I think we just need to, like you said, we need to get to a point where we feel secure again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot in the past, is like, I don't know, it's that security you find when you come at peace with, you could say destiny or purpose, or like, what I'm trying to say is like, I found a lot of peace of like understanding that God has my life. We talk trust the pilot, you know, we're on this plane, you know, like I could worry about my survival all I want, but that's not going to make me off or on the plane, you know, like you have to trust the person who's driving it. So once I accepted that, I felt like I felt like a rush of peace, a lot more freedom, you know?
Yeah.
So.
It's freeing, definitely, to accept what's going on and kind of knowing what you have control over.
Yeah.
Like simplifying life into just the right now. This is what I can do. I'm blessed to have a glass of water, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, in the whole scheme of things, there's people suffering way more than me.
Yeah.
For sure, man. And I mean, all I think about is the kids, you know, and I'm talking even like young adults that had to deal with this past year. I'm blessed to know that, you know, we grew up, you know, and we encountered, you know, the pandemic when we're adults already, and we are well established in our careers and everything. I would imagine kids nowadays and you know, teens in the adolescent stage, you know, now moving forward, they're going to look at the world differently than the way we did.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, I don't know. Do you think it's going to be harder for them to find their calling in life or easier? And it could be both. I don't know.
It could definitely be both. You know, like you have that mindset of, you know, like things could fall apart at any second, so why care?
Yeah.
Or things could fall apart at any second, so I better care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Damn. Well, and so talking about the ones that are like, you know, like forget it all. Like I don't care. Like, you know, not why dream big if something like a pandemic can happen anyway.
Yeah.
How do we get that person to move then? Because they're gonna end up being paralyzed and just being like, well, I don't care. Going back to the service model, where, you know, at that point it's like, why care about other people when shit can hit the fan anyway?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that sounds like so. I mean, yeah, obviously that's stagnation, man. I mean, I feel like you won't know what the world has for you. You won't know what God had for you if you don't do anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but definitely I think there's a select few of people that would look at it and go, things can happen at any time, so I might as well go all in front of me.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, that we're kind of in that boat. I would assume, you know.
You know, like I think we are lucky. 9 times out of 10, you know, if you talk to one of us, you know, we are in that boat.
Yeah.
But like perfectly honest, yeah, there are days I wake up, you know, and I hit that wall. You know, I hit that. is what I'm doing matter? Like, is all of this, like where you hit that depression? And yeah, like I think it's when you're stuck in stagnation, it's at that moment you realize, crap, I have a lot more work to do. Because
Yeah.
you have to dig really deep to figure out like where is this coming from? Because I firmly believe that all of us, like have this glorious purpose, right? If we're talking Loki, but we weren't meant to just like be born and then immediately start dying.
True.
There's a life that we have to live, and we just have to find it within us. And yeah, I mean, soul searching, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because like it's soul searching so much that you look past yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird thing. Like you search for yourself to find yourself and go through yourself to know that there's more people that matter than you. It's like this weird wall, like I guess a mirror or something, where you look in the mirror so hard that you start realizing that there's so much behind me,
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with my brother too, where it's like, it's such an opposite thing where people say like, oh, I need to find myself first. Like, well, yeah, true.
Yeah.
But it's never about you. That's the weird thing that I'm trying to wrestle with. It's like, having my family now, it's, I spent so many years finding myself and finding my role, my calling in life, to know that it was never about me.
Yeah.
And not to say that I'm like actualized or realized or anything. It's more of, I get to that point now where I'm like, there is so much to do. And we always talk about the future. We always talk about, the next few years, the next generation. What can we do for them that the past generations did for us? And I say that there's a bigger challenge now because of what happened in this past year and things that we understand were different than the previous generation. So the new generation, I mean, they grew up in a whole different world than us. And now we're teaching them. I find a little bit more challenges with this new generation. And I would say I got a lot more complaints about like things that like protocol, procedures that we have to do, standards.
Yeah.
And it's like, I find it a challenge to wrestle with that, with the new generation and their desires and their beliefs and what they think should happen. I don't know if you're getting that in at Cal State Fullerton, but this new generation is going to be our cohort, our students for the next few years. What do you think they need? And this is for me too. I'm trying to figure this out. Like, what do you think they need in an educator or a leader? What do they need?
The first thing that really comes to mind is what we were talking about earlier, is that security, that peace. We grew up in, like the 2008 panic, right?
Yeah.
So like for us, our biggest flaw is financial, worry. Like anything that threatens us financially, we immediately kind of get this anxiety tied to it because of what we experienced to it. But no matter what generation and whatever trauma we've hit in our generation, we're just looking to feel secure, take care of whatever it can to feel secure. And I feel like our job as educators, our job as people who are guiding them in this point of their life, like I said, I love this point of their life because they're really like, okay, I have to do this on my own, and they're gonna look down and they're gonna either see a safety net or not see a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it's like, how do we teach that resilience? Like, yeah, maybe you don't have a good support system. Maybe you have a great support system, but no matter what's there, how can I make you feel prepared and secured for that?
Yeah, and I think for each person it's different, right? Man, like I said, it's like trying to be prepared for anything, but still not knowing what can happen. It's the preparation for the worst, but expecting the best, and no one knows. I think that's the hardest part about life in general. And obviously, me and you, we're talking from this perspective as educators, where, in a sense, I feel like you're a father to people. And I know it's weird because we're younger, I guess, whatever. But I feel like I was a father before Amela was born, because your students come to you for a lot of things, advice. They come for guidance, wisdom, if anything. And it's funny because I think of us.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you don't even know us.
Yeah.
Like, if you only knew, you wouldn't go to these fucking guys for wisdom.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you are fathering the next generation, and I'm sure you feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When my first student sent email like, "Hey, can I set up office hours?" I was like, "What?
You want to meet with me?
Yeah. Wait, are you? Yeah." And it was like about interviews. It was about like, how do I get in this industry, or I have this coming up, and I'm like, wow, this is a real place of privilege. Like,
Yeah.
and I know I'm just starting off, and we all know how it feels to like get jaded and like, but I hope if I'm listening to this in the future and I am like, I hope you remember, like how important this is. Like I hope to never take that for granted, that I have the ability and the time that they want, and I should never take that for granted.
Yeah. That you're there when they need you.
Yeah.
And whoever that is at any point in life, that like they were looking for someone and you were there.
Yeah.
Man, I love being an educator for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, working in academia, it's such a generative thing where we can help the new generation and kind of nurture them to find their vision in life, or to at least sharpen it, gain more clarity in life. But it's also, dangerous too, where, if I have a bad day, I'm sure they could feel it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were days where you didn't want to open up your Zoom camera. And, sometimes, and like, if my students are listening to this, this is not you guys, but there's days where I was just like, man, F these fucking students, man. Like, I don't want to deal with them right now.
Yeah.
And, but it's because we're human.
Mm-hmm.
To be the upstanding, organized, good-humored Professor Leyran. What do they call you, ProfessorNeems? Professor Leyran.
Yeah, they usually just say professor because either name they're like,
True.
I don't know. Yeah, so they just say professor.
True. So for you to be the personable, hardworking, organized Professor Leyran, so much has to happen.
Yeah.
Before you open up the camera, before you step in front of that microphone in front of them in the classroom. What are your strategies to get into the zone, to get locked in, to kind of shake whatever you're dealing with outside, to be there in the lecture? Like, what's your strategy to deal with that stuff?
Yeah, like I said, for me, and the way I design my course is really to be ready for whatever they're going to say. Like I want to think of the great questions that'll get them there. I'm lucky, like, enough where my class isn't about like memorizing medications that might kill somebody. Like I don't know how you do it, and like
we memorize the good ones too. But
yeah. But for me, like mine are concepts. So I have to always be focused on, okay, am I confident in myself that I could lead this conversation the way I want it? Am I able to answer a question on the industry that they're wondering about in this course? So it is, yes, like preparing all of what I've done in my past lives and almost have it ready on the go from my pocket.
Yeah. I know exactly how you feel. Where you have to anticipate what they're going to ask, and almost over prepare.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, at the end of the day, if they don't ask you that question, at least, I mean, who knows? At some point in the future, someone's going to ask that question.
Yeah.
But so much goes into that I think students, and when I was a student, I didn't appreciate that. I mean, to get that PowerPoint up on the screen, up on the projector, so much had to happen. And I'm talking like hours of preparation for like a 1 hour lecture, and that's something, I guess, that happens behind the scene, that students and us as educators and as instructors know now that it's the critical piece. And it's also part of it, us growing as people.
Yeah.
Again, it's like being a parent, to be honest with you. Like, I found so many parallels now where, they don't have to know. They don't have to know what we prepared for. They don't have to know, how long it took me to be prepared for all their questions, or this 3-chapter lecture took me like 10 hours to do. But I'm only going to go over it for like an hour.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it so much more. And I look back at my instructors and my professors knowing now how much they put in. And it's really inspiring for me. And definitely that's one of those things that gets me going too, where it's like I try to just anticipate what they might need. And again, to be there, to plant those seeds that, if they're looking for a certain fruit, we've already planted that seed years ago.
Yeah.
And here's the fruit, I mean, it's a blessing to be in our roles for sure. And I mean, if there's anything that I would say that's close to being an instructor, and now it blows it out of the water, is to be a parent for sure, you're the godfather of my daughter. You're one of the godfathers. And I mean, the way I look at it now, and I always cherish godparents, because if ever something happens to our children, we look to the godparents, those that we know will be there for our children if something ever happened. Like we rely on you guys, and we know that when it comes down to it, you're gonna give of yourself. But I plan on fucking sticking around, man. If something's about to kill me, man, I'll survive, man, and I'll fucking kill that shit. Because I think for me, it's like we want to be there. I don't know what it is. Like I want to be there for, my students. I want to be there for my daughter. I want to be there for my wife, for our friends. I want to be there for my, my family. And I think that's the beautiful thing to have talks like this, to step back and just reconfigure everything again. And like you said, I was the same way this pandemic. Like I feel like there was days I woke up, and I mean it still happens randomly, like recently. Yeah. Like you wake up and you still want to do anything. And you're like, damn, dude. Like part of me misses the pandemic a little bit, like the lockdown where you wake up and you don't have too many responsibilities. Yeah. That's the part that I miss, where you just wake up and it's like you're not going anywhere, so we'll just watch TV or eat, right? This right now, I mean, we're recording this at your place, at your apartment, and this disruption was healthy for me. Yeah. Coming from work and it's just a full disruption of my schedule, it really helped me snap out of that funk. And I feel like this is just the start of many things that we're going to be doing in the future. I know one thing in particular that we've always talked about was finding the line between your profession and your vocation. Or we like to call it your craft and your calling, right? And it's funny because the way I look at craft and calling was always the manager and the leader, where the craft was like the hours put in to do tasks, to knock things out, to learn, and to grow in that aspect, to perform your job. But there was always the calling behind it, like the leader that's driving everything forward. It's the driving force. Yeah. Let's say you come across somebody who has no idea of what they want to do in life. They want to help people. They don't have a lot of experience. How would you get that person to find a craft that they're good at and a calling in life?
I think it's really back down to exposure. I think about when I started, my first job, was at Edwards, Regal Entertainment, right? Yeah. Like, when I started at 18, the only job I was ever exposed to was nursing. So I told myself I was going to be a nurse. I told myself I was going to go into like Everest or West Coast or whatever. I actually went into Cal State Fullerton as a pre-nursing major.
I didn't even know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But as I was, working at a movie theater, and they poorly made me an associate manager way too quickly. I fell in love with business a little bit more. I fell in love with customer service, and I wanted to learn more. And next thing you know, I'm working for Disney, and like, how are you gonna pick a career outside of Disney? True. That became my like laser focused vision of like, oh, I'm gonna be a manager, I'm gonna be a CEO, all of this stuff. And that world wouldn't have been opened if I didn't take that random job or go for that job interview at Edwards, and True. I talk about this with Adrian all the time. Like we're lucky to have gone to Cal State Fullerton, to have those 4 years. Like I think everyone, this isn't like I know I'm like a Cal State Fullerton professor, but this isn't an advertisement for college.
They don't give you a bonus to talk like this, dude?
No.
All right, okay.
No, but no matter what, if it's a 4-year college, if it's somewhere like, make sure you're exposing yourself to new experiences where you could actually really test out of like, is this something you truly love or like you feel connected to? I think when we were like really discussing craft and calling, right? We were talking about like that tingle, you know, like that like, whoa, what I'm doing right now, like I'm in the flow.
An appropriate tingle. Not,
yeah.
I know what you're thinking. You need to stop with that.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
There's some like itch or something. That's probably the best advice that you could give somebody is to get out there.
Yeah.
Move. Do the next thing in front of you. I think when you worked at Regal and with the customer service and stuff, I mean, you found yourself to be a very humorous person, a very witty, quick-witted person.
Yeah.
You know, no joke. This is a sidebar.
Yeah.
I asked you for your Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Your Wi-Fi is Jarvis, right?
Yeah.
I looked at the Wi-Fi's downstairs just to see if I could jump on one, and there's one that I thought was yours. It said "pretty fly for a Wi-Fi," and I was like, "That's Neiman." And I was gonna try to get on it, but like and guess your password, but it wasn't. But you know, either way, I was like, you know, because I know you as that guy.
Yeah.
You found yourself by moving. You found yourself by exposing yourself to other people. And, you know, and like I mentioned earlier, it's, you know, me being like an older brother to you. I know like we're second cousins, but me being like an older brother to you, it got me to realize like, yeah, we're nearly the same people.
Yeah.
With fine tuning to different strengths. And you found yourself in that road of, you know, service of other people in the entertainment industry, and in education. It's funny because we resonate now. We find each other in the education field, but we took so many different paths to come full circle again to this. Yeah. And I think that's why that craft and calling conversation happened, because we both love, you know, highlighting the best in others or getting them to realize their potential and going for it, you know, and all it really does take is that one step forward, the exposure to experiences.
Yeah.
Arguably, to live life, like just to live.
Yeah. I think also a big piece of that is not like only going out there, but is don't take any experience for granted. You know, like I said, it was a minimum wage job, you know, like selling popcorn, but I had as much fun with it as possible. I looked at why it was important. I looked into the industry of, you know, like it's movie theaters are just built on selling popcorn, you know, so, and those experiences came up later on in life, you know, like that I didn't expect it to, you know, like that's where I first started learning Excel, you know, that's where I first thought of like creative ways to do things, you know, and I see a lot of people, like if we're going to talk about new generation, you know, like come in and be like, oh, this is a job. I'm going to treat it like a job.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not mindful in what you're doing at that moment, you're just wasting your time. You know, like if you're not actually like actively, what can I grow from this? Yeah, you are going to waste years.
Yeah, you're not really growing from it. You don't look at it as like like in a growth mindset.
Yeah,
you're really not going to get anywhere. And it is just that clock in, clock out, peace out kind of thing.
Has there ever been an experience on your end that like found its way back that you didn't expect?
I would say dealing with a lot of difficult people.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back at certain things and in my career that I remember regretting certain things like, oh, why did I do this?
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that I try to express to my students every term, at least when I see new students, anybody that's aspiring to be nurses, like there's going to come a point where no matter what, it is going to feel like a job and it is going to be hard and you're going to hate it at some point, even dread going to work. And, you know, I talk to nurses, like current nurses on the floor today, and they still have that feeling like they're taking a shower before going to work at, 5 a.m. and they don't want to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had those days for sure. And like you said, just moving through it.
Yeah.
Moving through it, trying to open up the big perspective of like why I'm doing this is what got me through those moments. And now I look back at fighting through and having difficult situations and being able to work with somebody and collaborate with a patient through a difficult moment.
Yeah.
And patients like screaming in my face, throwing at me, spitting shit at me, like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
And then I question like, why the hell am I doing this?
Yeah.
And I think the answer I always got to was because not a lot of people would. They wouldn't go the extra mile.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let a patient run a mile on them.
Yeah.
Not for, for the big picture. They won't think about the big picture. And I think you're right. I think every difficult moment mattered, and I never took those for granted. Now I look back and I'm grateful for those moments because it shaped who I am now. And that's why it gave me a lot of confidence to be an educator, where it's like, I've dealt with some very difficult, schizophrenic patients.
Yeah.
A stressed out nursing student probably won't do a number on me. I could probably handle them.
Yeah.
Shout out to my students that did challenge me though. Like there's still some.
Yeah. And then spit on you.
Like, none of them spit on me. Not to that point. I think one of them was close at some point. She was just super pissed off on, how strict I was. But hey, you know what?
Yeah.
But definitely like all those experiences, they shape who we are. Mm-hmm. Which is why that's the perfect advice. Like everything, like you learn more about yourself.
Yeah.
Like when it comes down to it, you will be the person to go the extra mile, or to just, stay quiet and do the diligent work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Dude, that's such a crazy concept thinking about it right now though. Cause you're talking about if I'm the one who goes the extra mile, right? Like it had to be me in this moment. I think a lot of us, we live in this world where we feel replaceable, right? Like big corporations, I work for Amazon, I work for this, I work for that. Like I'm in or out, right?
Yeah.
But I think deep down, if you really look at people and you look at like what we work, like no one will ever do the job like you. No one will ever approach with the experience that you brought. Like, and I think those are the difference makers, right? Like that's what you were talking about. Like, dude, that's like kind of blowing my mind right now of just, like you are the person that is supposed to be in that role at that moment.
For that moment in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's like one of these quiet mantras that I have with myself. I don't know. Like, I guess it just resonates, but we're always intuitive. Like we always kind of know what the other's thinking. We grew up together. So that is one of those things where I try to psych myself up for moments like that.
Yeah.
Where if it's a challenging moment or it's something I don't want to do, that's like, oh man, like they need me to talk to this patient or something. It's always that thing of, if there was anybody else, it wouldn't come out the way it would if you did it.
Yeah.
And that's why you're called to do it now. And I mean, I'm dealing with situations, like a few in particular. It's like I showed up to work and it's like having that mentality of, I mean, I guess it's corny or whatever. It's weird. I was that kind of guy that like became a morning person for work. And, like in nursing, it's a team effort, no matter what. You have like, physicians, nurses, therapists, caseworkers, case managers. And it's, I always came thinking that I want to be the difference. And I know how cliche that sounds, but it's more of the team is better because I'm here, because it's me. Mm-hmm. Anybody can do this job, quote unquote job. But because it's me, they're going to get more than that. And I want to make that difference. The team is better. Right? The patients aren't even ready for me. I was weird. I was telling myself that. I was like, patients aren't even, like, I'm going to slap them in the face with some care. Like, I was weird. I was a weird guy. Yeah. But there were times where, shit still happened at work and people got hurt. And, patients didn't make it for certain situations. And I think back and we can blame people. We can blame like, oh, the night shift didn't do this or whatever. And it's like, it's horrible. Things like that shouldn't happen. And, me being the day shift, like family comes in and I got to deal with the family. And I mean, at that point, it's like we could play the blame game all we want, but it's whoever takes ownership of that situation. And if I should do what I said I was going to do, it has to be me in this moment. Yeah. And I hate it when I get into this loop of like, man, that person should have done this or whatever. No, in this given situation, it was meant to be me, and the world would be better because it was me. And it's like a silent mantra now where it's like, put me in any situation. Yeah. Put you in any situation. The outcome's going to be better. And I think that's what I want my students to always get from me every term. Every time I get a new group, and I have a group finishing up in a couple weeks, and I always have this talk with them where, success is not, it's not the goal anymore. You're going to be, like I tell them all the time, you're going to be very successful in your life.
Yeah.
The nurses that hurt people, the ones that, don't go the extra mile, they have an RN license, they have a bachelor's degree, they probably got a nice car after graduating school, they have a solid full-time job, maybe bought a new house, right? Very successful on paper. But what if I told you that that person that you're reading on the paper neglected somebody and that person died?
Yeah.
What are we going to say? Oh, but they're successful, right? And I think that's the problem. Is like success is kind of like this big banner picture for people where it's not about that. It's about being the difference. And that's why that's always the argument that I bring up. There's a difference between success and significance. Where on paper you could be very successful, but someone got hurt on your watch, and that shouldn't happen. So it's like, it's always the goal now should be to make the difference, to be significant in the world, in whatever role. And I'm not saying that's because you got to be like the RN with a bachelor's degree. It's in any role.
Yeah.
Serving popcorn. Yeah. Sweeping the floors. Like everybody in the company is just as important as the CEO.
Yeah.
Because the CEO can't do his or her job without housekeeping. And I'll always go back to like the importance of all that. If everyone is significant in their roles, that makes a very significant, company or business.
Yeah.
It's always about that now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would imagine, when you especially breathe this in and this concept in, like to everything that you do, you see the benefits of it. You see it impact people. And that's why I went into my path. I took myself off the floor. It was a hard decision.
Yeah.
But I found myself a little bit more effective and impactful this way than, just being that one nurse on the team. I told myself, like, I'll pull myself off the floor and maybe I can, work with aspiring nurses. And if I send 5 people with this perspective, I already multiplied myself.
Yeah.
And not to say that I'm the perfect nurse. It's like, yo, I'm the guy that you'd want on your team when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And there's a few people that are like that, and that's who we want to be. Not successful. I mean, success is like a metric on this earth where it's like on paper. Significance is from the heart, it's from the soul, and that to me is calling.
Yeah.
Right. There's a successful person at a craft. There's a significant person in a calling.
Yeah.
And I think, if there's anything that we like bleed out, it's that.
Yeah. And on a business side of things, I come out with like from the school of thought with business, the bottom line of any business, of the purpose of existing as a business, is value added. You take your inputs, whatever you do with it, you create value or you add value to whatever it was before and turn it out, right?
Yeah.
And our job as educators are to take these students, right? And like somehow like whatever they entered our room, how are we adding value to them? So when they come out of our classrooms, they're more valuable. They have more to offer. Yeah. And like you said, like I can only imagine how that thought process of going, like, okay, I'm adding value to this one patient today, but if I am a teacher, I could add value to 5 patients through 5 students,
Yeah. And like 5 patients, but 5 sets of families and 5 other nurses. It's just infectious at that point.
Yeah.
And that's the most beautiful thing, is that it's the ripple effect. It's the impact you make on one life. Like you resonate this in everything you do.
Yeah.
So everybody feels it around you. You don't even have to say a word. And at that point, those people, because they're impacted by it, end up doing better work. They affect those groups of circles and whatever in their life. And ideally I'm not saying we're saving the world here. But it's making that little change, making that little difference, making just that positive, resonant impact.
Yeah.
Not for like a selfish reason, not for like recognition. It's because it's what must be done.
Yeah.
It's what a arguably good person ought to do in that situation.
Yeah.
And it's when no one's watching. Ultimately, when that decision's made, it's like you're either all in or you're all out, or it's about me, or it's about them, you know. And I mean, I would hope that anybody in a situation like that, you know, I would trust, like through the nature of our hearts, that it's always about others. It's always about service to others.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the people where you do find where it is the opposite, you know, where it's like self-centered or focused, is, you know, like it's the people who've been hurt, the people who've been burned in the past, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why it's like on our side of those, you know, it's like, how do you heal? You know, how do you heal those people to get them to like come back to the point, you know, like, I think that's just as important.
And that might be one of the most difficult challenges in anybody's life, is to look at the past traumas that affect us now and how we operate now. You know, people grow up in different lives, and because of those lives, we look at our world like in a specific angle, and we operate from that.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, especially, you know, speaking of like patients that have had past traumas or something. Now, like maybe because they were physically abused when they were young, they come out and they feel naturally that abusing people is how to get what you want in life. Mm-hmm. And that's so dangerous. So they're in the hospital because of safety.
Yeah.
They're a danger to others, or, you know, themselves even. So they're in the hospital, we're keeping them safe. Yeah. But part of the treatment is to tap into the root cause. Yeah. And, you know, maybe we manage their behavior now to be safe. We, you know, medications. But at some point there's therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, to tap into that one seed that was planted of imposing pain. Yeah. And a lot of us hate looking at that moment, because it is the trauma. Right? And we block it up. We lock it up in this like far back cabinet that we never touch. It's the hardest thing to get someone to realize that, well, because of that trauma that you're hiding in the cabinet, you're hurting people. Yeah. You know, how do you get someone to accept that, to understand that, you know, not to just get them to stop, but it's more of, hey, like we're in a world of people. Mm-hmm. There's more than us. And if we're all hurting each other, that's where, you know, we lose whatever, battle we have with the good and evil, or whatever it is. Yeah. You know, and I know this sounds so like, I don't know, universal. It's like this wide ranging thought, but in reality, I think people forget how simple it is. Yeah. To just do good. Yeah. To do good for people. And it's one of those like Mr. Feeney's. It's not do well. Yeah. Like actually do good in life. Yeah. You know? We'll close out. I want to close out with this quote. It goes, as for me, my calling is simple. I'm called to be a servant. Let me serve. Let me serve these students, and together we can serve this great and loving God and show the world there are still real men and women like us. Neiman Honorio Leyran. Neems, thank you, man.
Thank you. That's awesome.